So there we go. Thank you all so much for joining us today for Hot Girls Nutrition. And I'm delighted to welcome Courtney Puidk. Courtney is a registered dietitian who works in both the public health and private practice space. She currently works for the USDA. As a functional dietitian, Courtney takes a holistic approach to health by considering one's habits around food, sleep, and fitness, as well as stress and toxic environmental factors. Because we're leading up to our retreat next month, where we focus a lot on how we as women take care of ourselves or haven't historically taken care of ourselves. I was really excited that Courtney agreed to speak with us today. And today moderating is one of our Quorum DC chapter co-chairs, Veronica Torres. Veronica is a worldwide privacy and regulatory counsel at Jumio Corporation and previously was chief privacy officer at Comscore. She also serves on the IAPP Privacy Bar Section Board. A couple quick reminders. If you have questions, you can drop them into the chat function. If you're not talking, if you'll mute your computers, that would be great. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Veronica and Courtney. Thank you both so very much.
Thank you. And I think Courtney is going to be sharing some slides today for this. So Courtney and I had met a while ago now. We've been friends for some time. And I am what Courtney, for the first 3 years of our friendship, referred to as her CrossFit friend. Everywhere we'd go, she'd introduce us, and she'd be like, "These are my CrossFit friends." And so that's how we met. We're still doing it together every day, every evening. When we go to our class, or almost every evening, we're in class together. And I have, over the years, kind of asked Courtney for my own advice on nutrition. I think it's a super important factor. It's something that I didn't grow up with. I grew up eating drinking Yoo-hoos and White Castle burgers, so I had no concept of nutrition. I think the most vegetables I ever ate were canned. We didn't do fresh vegetables. And a salad for me has always been, and this is a very, I think, Miami thing too. I didn't even know about sweet greens or chops or things like that until I moved up to the East Coast. A salad, when you say I want a salad in Miami, what you're going to get is iceberg lettuce, white onion slices, and tomato. That's all you're going to get. So it was fascinating to me to even think about vegetables in a different way when I moved up here. So Courtney, would you like to just give a little bit of additional background, and we can open up your slides and get to it?
Sure. So my name is Courtney Puidk. I'm a registered dietitian, which you might hear people refer to themselves as nutritionists. So there is a difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian. And the difference is that dietitians have to have gone through a accredited program and done an accredited internship, which is a year long, and we paid to do them. So it's like another year of school where we experience life as a dietitian in different settings. So the main settings for dietitians are clinical, so hospital-based, and then food service. So think like hospital food service, school food service, college campus food service, things like that, and then public health. So I am in the public health sector, and so I work with the WIC program, which is the Women, Infants, and Children's program. But I got interested in nutrition because, much like Veronica, I grew up not eating like a ton of vegetables. I grew up in mid-Missouri, and my parents worked alternating shifts. So one of them would be at work at night and the other one would be at work during the day. And it was just a hectic schedule. I have 3 sisters and we're all within 5 years of age of each other. So, my parents were just doing their best to keep us healthy. But they didn't necessarily know that much about nutrition. And so I was active my whole life, like playing soccer and on the track team. But we grew up drinking soda, and my soda of choice was Mountain Dew. And so I would drink like a liter or 2 liters of Mountain Dew a day when I was in high school. And so one day, I don't remember like why I was inspired to look at the label of a Mountain Dew bottle, but I saw yellow number something, and you see the words like lake and just like all these chemical sounding words. And I was like, what? Yellow is not like an ingredient. Yellow is a color. And so I just decided after reading the nutrition label to like stop drinking soda. And even though I was an active teenager, I lost 8 pounds and like hadn't changed anything else. So it was just really an eye-opening experience to me about how what we put into our bodies, like we don't really necessarily think about how they're impacting us until we strip something away and see a change like that without having changed anything else. So that inspired me to start studying nutrition. So I went to undergraduate school in Chicago at the University of Illinois, and I did clinical nutrition there. And that was when I didn't really realize that there were other realms of nutrition. So at the end of the day, in my clinical undergraduate degree, I learned how to treat disease states with nutrients as you would in the clinical setting, like in the hospital. And that's not what I wanted to do. So I went and got my master's at Bastyr University, which is a naturopathic medical school in Seattle. And so they have a much more holistic view on nutrition and how to prevent diseases by having a healthy lifestyle. And that was much more what I was interested in. And then when I did my internship, I became interested in policy and how we can get, our less affluent populations to have the same sort of equitable access to the healthy foods that we have as, more affluent type of socioeconomics plays a lot into that. And so, and it's not just helping them access those foods, but helping them understand how to eat them and why they should be eating them and all of that sort of stuff. And so I was explaining to Veronica the other day that like nutrition is like a tree. So there's like one main trunk, and then there's so many different branches. So it's nutrition presentations are always fun because I'm sure there will be questions that are not covered in my presentation today.
And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand in the Zoom, and we can work through this. This is an open field for everybody to participate if they'd like to.
Yeah. And I do have a little co-presenter with me, so you might see Bella pop up. She loves being on video meetings. So, she hears other people's voices and she comes to sit on my lap, even though she's been on the bed all morning. So, okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I did put together some slides. Can I share my screen?
Diane, you might have to
I
give her
made you a
access.
co-host, so you should be able to.
I did just have to download Zoom. So it's like asking me for a permission.
Okay, let me try that again.
You sent them to me, right, Courtney?
I only added a slide at the end just this morning about further reading in case if people want to. Okay.
You are a co-host. Or Veronica?
I can't even share. It says you've disabled the sharing function.
I did.
Yeah, that's what it said, that the sharing function is disabled all the way.
Okay. Can you do it now, Veronica? My apologies. I've just made you a co-host as well.
Yes. Courtney,
Okay.
you see it now that you're able to.
Let's see. Maybe you should just share them.
Oh. Here we go.
He was asking me to open system preferences and then it doesn't do anything. Okay, great.
We are good to go.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about macronutrients and micronutrients, and reading nutrition labels. So that's kind of general nutrition, but I feel like every time I start a nutrition conversation and just assume that people know what macronutrients and micronutrients are, I learned that that's not always the case. So I think it's really good information too to just go through a little bit more in depth about like what some of these things are. So that's what we're going to do here. So macronutrients, as you can see, I have them listed here, but they're going to be carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So these are the nutrients that provide calories, whereas micronutrients don't provide calories. And they all have different roles in our bodies, but they also work together to get those functions completed. For example, like fats help your body absorb fat-soluble vitamins, but fat-soluble vitamins can be found in vegetables that don't have any fat in them, like a sweet potato has a lot of vitamin A, but you're not going to be able to absorb the vitamin A in that sweet potato unless you eat it with a source of fat. So, so that's an example. So this chart over here on the right, you'll see this pie chart is a description of what the average healthy person needs from their diet in terms of macronutrients. And so you'll see that carbohydrates make up about 50% of the average healthy person's dietary needs. And that's because carbohydrates are your body's primary source of fuel. So there's all sorts of terminology out there that like demonizes carbohydrates. And when people say that they're watching their carbs, they might mean watching their grains or watching their total carbohydrate intake, or even just watching their sugars, added sugars at that. But even for people who say that they're reducing their carbs, they're probably still eating vegetables, maybe even still eating fruits. All of those things have carbs in them. The only thing that doesn't have carbs in it is meat and oils. So, so there's a little bit of misconception about what carbs are and where they come from just out in the and on the internet, you know. So we need about 30% of our calories from fat and about 20% of our calories from protein. And so you'll see the calories per gram of each of these macronutrients listed underneath each one. So carbohydrates and protein each have 4 calories per gram, and fats have 9 calories per gram, which doesn't make them bad for you. It just means that they contribute more calories. So that's why, even though you'll see in a couple slides, like, even though you're getting 30% of your calories from fat and 20% from protein, the calories from fat are higher than the calories from protein at that level. So you'll see that in just a slide or two. But these will obviously vary based on someone's body composition goals, their activity level, and even their metabolic state. So based on any like genetic diseases or life cycle factors, these numbers can vary quite a lot. Like somebody who is a type 1 diabetic and is following a ketogenic diet, they'll be getting nearly all of their calories from fat, a few calories from protein, and hardly anything from carbohydrates. And it's really hard to follow a ketogenic diet, and it's not sustainable for a very long time unless you're doing it for a valid reason, like a diabetic might be doing. But they also are working with doctors and learning how to eat exogenous ketones, which is a whole conversation for another time, right? On the flip side, you might have a Olympic athlete who, like Michael Phelps, he needs like 65%. Well, I mean, he's retired now, but when he was swimming, he needs like 65% of his calories from carbs, and then about 30% from protein and the rest of that from fat. So only 10% from fat. So for him, he'd be eating like a lot of lean meats, lean dairy, whole grains, fruits and vegetables. And to get to to get to his calorie goal, eating a whole foods diet would be a lot of food. So he's probably also drinking some sort of supplement to get all those calories in. It can be overwhelming for someone with that calorie range. All right. So here I have a little breakdown of your sources of each of the macronutrients. So carbs are found in a variety of foods. Like I said, if you hear someone say they gave up carbs, that probably means they're not eating grains or fruits or added sugars. Because all vegetables contain carbs, all fruits contain carbs, all grains contain carbs, and it's really just proteins and fats that don't really contain them. And then proteins, you've got a variety of protein sources too, like beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, and vegetables. All of those are going to be sources of carbohydrates as well. So most foods are going to give you some amount of every macronutrient, but they're just going to vary in how much they give you. And so I have like the best sources. These are going to be more whole foods type sources. And when I say whole foods, I mean minimally processed. So eating food in the form that it's most closely found in nature is the best way to make sure you're getting the most nutrients out of your food. So when we say processed, like technically apple slices are processed, right? Or popcorn is processed, and things that are sliced and chopped are considered processed, or even blended are considered processed too. But when I think processed foods, I think like snack foods and junk foods, like candy and maybe potato chips. There's some potato chips that are better than others. But you also want to think about eating, I'm an advocate of an everything fits kind of lifestyle. So maybe you're not eating a Twinkie every day, but if you really like Twinkies and you want to have one once in a while, it's not going to kill you, right? But if you're looking to kind of cut out the least healthy sorts of carbohydrates, those are going to be things that have been processed to make them white. So you won't find white rice just like naturally growing in a field. It's been processed to strip the outside of it off, and so it's losing all of its nutrients when that happens. So white rice is just like carbohydrates, and just like sugar, not sugary carbohydrates, but there's the glycemic index, and white rice is not good for your glycemic index, which is also another conversation. So it's another one of those branches on the nutrition tree. But for proteins,
my mom was just diagnosed with diabetes for the first time, and we are Cuban and Puerto Rican, and I think every time I speak to her, her first conversation is, can you believe I can't have white rice anymore? Because it's just too much. Even a little bit will spike her levels up to a point where she can't manage them.
Yeah, so like if you are going to be having white rice, it would be best to have a little bit of white rice and then mix it with a lot of beans and lean proteins to help the sugar, like the carbohydrates get absorbed at a slower pace. So yeah, there's a lot of considerations, especially when somebody has a condition like diabetes. So then proteins are found in a lot of meat products, but also are found in vegetables, and also beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds. So tofu, seitan, and things that are made out of those. I did put a little note here that when you're looking to shy away from the fats that are the worst for us, those are going to be saturated fats, but more so even trans saturated fats. So labels now have to say if they have more than 0.5 grams per serving of trans fats in them. But what a lot of food companies did when that rule happened in Congress was they just changed their serving size. So say the serving size used to be 1.5 ounces, and that would mean that they would have 1 gram of trans fats. They changed their serving size to 1 ounce so that they can say that it doesn't have any trans fats. So the food companies can kind of play these games with their products and their packaging. So the best thing you can do is just read the nutrition label and the ingredients. And so if you see any hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils in a food, that means that there's trans fats added in it. So you want to shy away from those. But then trans fats are also found naturally in some things like whole milk and maybe some cheeses. But they're like in very minuscule amounts and they're not added. So they're not nearly as bad as like a snack food that might have hydrogenated oil in it. And the hydrogenated oils, they're popular because they help extend the shelf life of foods. And they also create a better mouthfeel. So we like eating them more. So it's the slippery slope, because they taste good, they feel good in our mouths, and they keep our food fresh longer, or fresh, it's not fresh food to begin with. So, but that's how, if you avoid eating them or start to strip them out of your diet, then those cravings kind of go away. And so there's also a lot of there's a whole nother branch on the nutrition tree about like where food comes from, right? And so you'll see me say something about oils here in a few slides about using oil on your salads and stuff. Like you can read on at another time or follow up with me about like what oils are best for cooking and salad dressings. Like I recommend olive, avocado, and coconut oils. We want to shy away from, corn oils and vegetable oils and those kind of oils. And then that said, like if we're lucky enough to start thinking about what to do to have a better, more healthier diet, you might also start coming across issues like where your food is grown and how it's grown or raised. And these might encourage you to like look more at eating local foods and incorporating more plant-based diet foods into your diet. And some people might even be encouraged to go towards a vegetarian diet or even vegan. So there's just a lot of information out there. Once you get to like how healthy is your diet, you can start exploring like where your food comes from. All right, so micronutrients. So as opposed to the 3 macronutrients, there's couple dozen micronutrients. So I'm only going to talk about a few and the ones that are the most important for women. So we've got our fat soluble vitamins. So these are the ones that need fat along with them in the digestive system to be absorbed. So this is just one benefit to eating a little fat with all of your meals. These vitamins are important for vision, bone, and reproductive health, preventing blood clots and helping your body fight infection and boost immunity. So some of them act as antioxidants like vitamin E. Vitamin A is going to be found in like orange colored fruits and vegetables. So you'll see, oh, I put that on there, in spinach. And then vitamin D, we get mostly from the sun, but we can also find it in fatty fish, egg yolks, and fortified dairy products. And now they're fortifying orange juice with vitamin D too, or as well. Vitamin K, you can think kale. It's going to be found in your leafy green vegetables. And then vitamin E is primarily from nuts and seeds, and then mangoes, leafy greens, and vegetables. So those are your fat soluble vitamins. And then the water soluble vitamins are the B vitamins. So there's 8 of them. And then vitamin C. So the B complex vitamins, they're found in like nuts, meat, seafood, banana, a whole wide range of things like whole grains. They're found in every food group. Vitamin C is primarily found in fruits and vegetables. So citrus fruits, strawberries, bell peppers, and tomatoes. And these water-soluble vitamins are important for immune support, but they also help break down the macronutrients and then transport oxygen and energy through the bloodstream. And then we've got minerals. So minerals are going to be found in a variety of foods as well, but we've got calcium, potassium, iron, and then those are just like the top 3. There's also sodium and magnesium and a few other ones as well. But I wanted to talk about vitamin D for just a second more, because vitamin D, we all know that it comes from the sun, I feel like. We all know that we need it for healthy bones, but vitamin D also promotes calcium absorption, which is also part of the reason why it's so important for bone health. So without vitamin D, we won't be able to absorb calcium as well. And then vitamin D also has some hormone type functions where it helps different receptors and different functions in your body, like glucose metabolism. And glucose metabolism means how your body metabolizes sugar or breaks down sugar. And then like cell proliferation, which is a fancy way of saying how your cells reproduce, and if they're injured, how they fix themselves. So vitamin D is important for a lot of things, not just bone health.
I've had oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Into this, so I know that we're going to talk about this, but are we getting enough vitamin D from our daily diets in general, or is there a reason we should be supplementing our vitamin D intake as women?
Yes, well, as women, there is, and we need different vitamin D levels throughout our lifespan, but also because vitamin D does come from the sun, we have receptors in our skin cells and also in our eyeballs, which is kind of a newly discovered fact, that we absorb a lot of vitamin D from the sun through our eyes, which is also kind of good to know, because if you're wearing sunscreen, you're not getting that absorption. So thinking about like how I used to live in Seattle, we don't get a lot of sunlight there, right? And now I live in DC, which we get more sunlight here in DC, but if you're looking at the planet and you look at the longitudinal lines, DC and Seattle are kind of in the same height, if you will, on the planet. And so there's actually months of the year that are better for us to absorb vitamin D, like May through September. And then when we hit October to April, our vitamin D absorption from the sun goes down. And that's partially because it's cold, so we're wearing sleeves. It's also because the ozone layer is thicker during those months of the year. So it's just not coming through as well into where we can actually get it from. So during the winter would be a really good time for people to supplement with vitamin D. But then as women, well, we should be supplementing probably as we get a little older. And one is because we do protect ourselves from the sun more typically as we get older and learn more about how protecting ourselves from the sun not only prevents cancer, but also helps us stop wrinkles. And we care about that as women, right? So we protect ourselves from the sun. And by protecting yourself from the sun, you're keeping yourself from getting that vitamin D. So vitamin D is definitely a nutrient that women should consider supplementing with. And we'll talk more about supplements in a little bit. And then I just wanted to touch on potassium for a second. So people know that sodium is like bad for hypertension. And I feel like sodium gets a bad shtick because it's a very important part of our diets. And there's just a lot of misinformation out there about sodium. So the best thing that you can do if you're worried about how much salt you're eating isn't necessarily to like make all your food bland by not seasoning it, but just make sure that you're eating a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables and even potatoes because they're sources of potassium. So potassium counterbalances sodium in your body to help keep your they're both electrolytes, but they both work in hydration and hypertension. So if you have enough potassium in your system, then it's going to help balance out your sodium levels. And so we'll keep it there. Potassium is also important because it helps your muscles contract and supports normal blood pressure. And so all of these micronutrients are really important for like preventing and treating like muscle soreness after a workout, or even cramps that you might like, muscle cramps and things like that. So a lot of times I teach Pilates as well, and people will be like, oh, my legs have been cramping so much this week. And I'm like, are you getting enough calcium? Are you getting enough potassium? So I hear cramps and I just think micronutrients. All right. So this slide, this Eat a Rainbow slide, is just showing you that like fruits and vegetables are nature's multivitamins. So one of the best things you can do for your health is eat a variety of colors in your fruits and vegetables every day. So on this slide, you'll see that yellow fruits and vegetables have, I think anthocyanins, but they also have vitamin C, vitamin A. All the orange vegetables are going to be great sources of vitamin A, some vitamin E. All the red ones have a really high antioxidant levels called resveratrol, which you might hear in the wine industry now because they're kind of leveraging that because red grapes have a lot of resveratrol and it does come into your wine. So that is why you'll hear people talking about wine being an antioxidant. I feel like we make excuses for our wine, and that's okay. To a certain extent. And then your green vegetables are going to have a lot of folate, which is a B vitamin, vitamin K, potassium, calcium, and iron. And so I also just wanted to touch on the fact that you'll see like iron and calcium and protein coming from all these different vegetable sources. And so it's very possible for vegans and vegetarians to get their iron and protein from a plant-based diet. Vegans typically do have to supplement with vitamin B12, but other than that, they can get everything from their diet, right? So you don't have to eat animal products to get enough iron and calcium and protein. All right, so on the next slide, I have color coordinated these foods to align with their different food groups, but you'll see this is like a sample 2,000 calorie day where we're getting 50% of our nutrients from carbs, which is 250 grams of carbs, which would be a lot for some people to even think about eating, because the diet industry has taught us to remove as many carbs as possible from our diets. But 250 grams is a perfectly healthy amount of carbohydrates for someone eating a 2,000 calorie diet to be eating. And then 20% of your protein would be 100 grams, and then 30% of your fat would be 66 grams. And so what that would look like in a whole foods based diet, and to me, looking at this little diet plan that I just whipped up, it's a lot of food for someone to eat in one day. And that's because there aren't a lot of processed items in here. And so this is one of my tips that I give to everybody is complementing your foods. So when you're having a meal, you're trying to get 3 to 5 of the food groups in there. So the food groups being fruits and vegetables, whole grains, dairy, meat and proteins. And why am I missing one? Fruits, vegetables, dairy, protein.
I think you're missing cake. That would be my last one there.
So like even at breakfast, people think, oh, they're going to have oatmeal. And a lot of people, I'm surprised a lot of people still make their oats with water, but I think oats are like one of the foods that you can put milk in and then you can stir other things into them. So they're a good place to like hide your other food groups is what I kind of think about them as. So if you make your oats with a cup of milk and then sprinkle them with like chopped nuts and dried fruits and then have some orange juice as well, you're hitting all of you're getting 4 different food groups there. And then you'll see like you can increase the number of types of colors that you're having too. So maybe you're having blueberries on your oats and then you're having orange juice, then you're getting blue and orange and brown foods in your meal. So another one of the things that I like to tell to everybody is, as well as aiming for 3 to 5 food groups in a meal, you're trying to get at least 3 colors in a meal. And then for your snacks, you're trying to get at least 2 food groups. And so this way, by combining your foods together, you're helping your body absorb all the nutrition that it can from the specific foods. Like, say for apples, we don't have any fat soluble vitamins in apples, but let's say we did. Pairing it with Greek yogurt that has a little bit of fat in it will help your body absorb fat soluble vitamins that are found in the other food that you're eating it with, right? And so that's why we pair our foods. The really only time that we don't do that is in sports nutrition settings, which is another branch of the nutrition tree.
We've got a couple of questions about nut milks and how we should, or whether we should incorporate them. How can they be incorporated into diets, and are they a substitute for just regular milk?
Yeah, nut milks and plant-based milks are fine. I personally drink soy milk. I just like the thickness of soy milk, and it has more protein than the nut milks do. So that's why I choose soy milk over the nut milks. You'll hear a lot about how almond milk is made and how much water it takes to make almond milk and how much water it takes to even grow almonds. So for me, I choose not to drink almond milk just because of those agricultural aspects of it, but also because it doesn't have any protein. So if you're trying to get more protein in your diet and you're having plant-based foods, I don't think it's like the best use of your intake to have nut milks that don't have protein in them. So almonds have protein. There's something about the processing the processing method that makes the proteins disappear from the nut milks and rice milk too. So if you're looking at soy milk and rice milk and nut milk, the most important things, if you're not caring about the protein, the most important things are to make sure that it's been fortified with calcium and maybe fortified with vitamin D as well, because those items won't naturally have a lot of calcium. Almonds will have some, but they won't have as much as like cow's milk will. And then like soy milk doesn't naturally have calcium in it, so it has to be fortified. So if you're looking to get your calcium from your like plant-based dairy products, you just have to look at the label, make sure that they've been fortified with the calcium that you need.
And when Courtney and I were looking at this, when she showed me the slide for the first time, I know that 2,000 calories sounds like nothing we've ever been told before, right? Like MyFitnessPal made an entire business out of telling people that they should be eating 1,200 calories a day. And a lot of companies out there focus on less is where you should be. 2,000 calories and even just this amount of food does seem like a lot, even with busy lives and all of that. From a personal anecdote, I can say that I worked with not a dietitian, but a nutritionist. While I was a couple of years ago, I was at peak exercising. And the first time they told me to eat this many calories, I was like, absolutely not. I want to lose weight. I don't want to gain weight. But it was fascinating to watch the moment I did start eating this many calories and upped my protein intake, and I was eating for an athletic composition, but I lost weight. I lost fat. Essentially, I built muscle super quickly. I had more energy. I was able to focus on workouts because I had that carb fuel in me, and then my muscle building because of the protein. So I know that 2,000 calories can seem like a a shock, but sometimes more is actually helpful for your body than less.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because a lot of people do think that they need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. But if you we have what's called your resting metabolic rate, and that's how many calories your body's burning just like sitting on your couch all day. So say I was in a coma in a hospital, my basal metabolic rate is like what my body needs just for me to breathe and push blood through my body, right? And that's like typically 13 to 1500 calories for most people. So then you're just adding your activity level on top of that. So when people start dipping below 1500 calories for weight loss, their bodies get stressed out. And when your body's stressed out, it's not going to lose weight the way it should. And also, your body can't build muscle in a calorie deficit. There's very, very few studies that show teenage boys building muscle in a calorie deficit, but they're also like working with doctors 24/7 on very strict diets and doing a lot of physical activity. And we're not teenage boys, So the best thing that you can do for your body is eat enough calories to support your activity level, even if you are trying to lose a few pounds, because it'll help your body rest better, work better, and sleep is also a part of that too. So keeping your body unstressed is the best thing you can do for it. And by putting it in a mega calorie deficit, you're stressing it out. And that's like a very simplified way of trying to explain that. So when you're eating like a whole foods diet, I had a client once, and my very first job as a dietitian was at a gym. And it was a lot of weight loss counseling. And so I was happy when this guy came in and he wanted to gain weight. And we ended up putting him on like a 4,000 calorie diet, and he was a vegetarian. And so he didn't want to eat meat or tuna and stuff like that. And so we ended up, I had him on 3,000 calories and 35 and 4,000. And then I was like, we have to supplement, because we can't do like a whole foods based diet with this much food. You're just going to be eating all day long. So there's like some weight gaining supplements on the market. We think about weight loss supplements, but there's weight gaining supplements too. They're called like mass gainers. And so I did have him like start incorporating some of those. That guy, he just had a crazy metabolism. But
and going to the gym, there's nothing more frustrating than when a 20-something-year-old man walks out and he's like, have to eat my muscle mass, like have to throw this shake in, I have to eat 4,000 calories today.
Yeah, those shakes have like 1,600 calories in them too. Like they have a lot of calories. And it's mostly carbs, So that's sports nutrition for you. So yeah, we can go on to the slide. So reading a nutrition label, not all of your foods are going to have nutrition labels. If it's like an apple or some fresh produce, you're likely not going to have a nutrition label, but that's okay. Like one of my friends in school once said, like, eating fruits and vegetables never made anybody fat. And I'm like, well, I agree with that. People don't like to hear that, but like you can eat as many fruits and vegetables as you want. You're not going to gain weight. It's going to be the things that are higher in calories and less and don't have any fiber in them that are going to contribute to the more calories that your body intakes. Also because fruits and vegetables don't have fats. So they're going to be lower in calories just because there's, 4 calories per gram of protein and carbs that you find in fruits and vegetables.
And that's that you're not, fruits and vegetables are not going to be your sole contributor to weight gain in that scenario. There's probably other reasons. If that is your diet, there's probably other reasons, and it's not just those 2 factors.
Yeah. So when you hear people, like one of my biggest pet peeves is when people say they don't eat carrots because there's too many carbs. Like, okay. I digress. If it came out of the ground, it's fine. That's how I see it. But there's other things that have nutrition labels that are perfectly healthy for us. Like, I don't know what this label is from, but I'm going to tell you how to read it. So a few years ago, the FDA passed a new nutrition label law. So the nutrition label has changed as of January 1st last year. And so this is the new nutrition label. So it now tells you how many servings are in the container, which is nice, and then what the serving size is. Typically, you will also see them tell you how many calories are in a serving, but then also how many calories are in the entire container. So typically this label would say calories per serving 230, and then calories per container, whatever 230 times 8 is. So that, you know, if you ate the whole container, you'd be getting 2,000 something calories, right? I usually need a calculator to do math, guys. So, but anyway, so you might see two numbers, and that's why. So it's telling you per serving or per container. And then you'll see they have to have the daily value percentage for specific items. And then in the in the macro and micronutrients, there are specific ones that they have to tell you the amount, even if it's 0. So you'll see this one has a little bit of everything in it, but vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium have to be included on a nutrition label so that you understand how much of each thing you're getting from these foods. So this is probably a bean of some sort, and I'm just saying that because of the iron level, and it's got calcium in it as well. Or it could be a canned fish, but the canned fish wouldn't have that much fat, I don't think. So anyway, so you'll see, and these percent daily values are based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So if we're thinking that 8 grams of fat is 10% of your daily value, this is saying that they consider 80 grams of fat to be what the average person would top out at for their fat intake. And I think most people know how to read. I don't know. This is another, like, when you make assumptions, you leave out a subset of people. But
what about Courtney? We talked to you about, so the carbs come up a lot, and when if we see products on the market say net carbs, it only has 2 carbs in this entire product, but then when we look at the nutrition label, total carbs seems to be a lot higher than the net carbs. What's the distinction there?
Yeah, and so net carbs is something that came like to light a lot when people were doing the Atkins diet, which was a carb counting diet, is a carb counting diet. And also people who are doing keto look at net carbs. So here you'll see that this item has 4 grams of fiber, which also means it's a vegetable or fruit of some kind, because that's where fiber comes from, or beans. So again, I think it's some sort of bean. It's probably refried beans. I'm going to stop trying to guess what it is. So, so you'll see it's got 4 grams of fiber. So this item would say that it has 33 grams of net carbs. So net carbs are your carbohydrates minus your fiber, because it takes more calories to digest fiber than fiber contributes. So fiber is kind of like a non-nutritive carbohydrate, which is a confusing thing to think about, but they basically just subtract the fiber count. And if this item had sugar alcohols in it, then you would also see those taken out of the net carbs too. So let's say that like this had 10 grams of sugar alcohols, which would be a lot. You probably wouldn't see that many. But if this was 10 grams of sugar alcohols and 4 grams of fiber, they would minus 14 grams to get the net carbohydrate count. And that's because sugar alcohols have a very, very minuscule contribution to calories. People think they don't have any calories, but they do. They have like 0.5 to 1 calorie per gram. So a lot less than sugars would have. So that's what your net carbs are. And so when people are counting their net carbs, they're doing that because they're trying to reduce the glycemic index and the load of the sugars, which carbohydrates they all break down to sugar, right? But where they come from matters a lot, because if they have fiber in them, then you're also getting that fiber in there. And if they have protein in them, then you're also like, and if you're eating them with fat, it's all about how we like combine our foods together. But if you're just like eating a handful of jelly beans, then and maybe jelly beans isn't a great example because it is a processed sugary food. But if I was craving apples and I just had 3 apples without anything else, then all the complex sugars from the apple will get broken down more quickly because nothing's in my stomach to slow it down. And then so that would mean that my glycemic index would spike faster than it would if I had eaten those apples with peanut butter, right? And so that's what net carbs is, just trying to get your body to have less carbs. So when you're thinking keto, most people aim for like less than 30 carbs a day. And when they say that, they mean net carbs. And so it's the keto diet is like aiming to get your body to go into ketosis, which means that it's now using fat for fuel instead of carbohydrates. So when you're looking at that sort of like net carb counting, they're trying to show you that something has as little carbohydrates to contribute to your diet as possible. So it'll help you stay in ketosis. So net carbs don't really matter unless you're on a carb counting diet. But there is like and I never learned this in school, like where, if we're looking at that nutrition label again, you can go back to it. Yeah. So here, like we said, there's 33 net carbs, right? And we know that 12 of those are sugar, which means that there's 21 carbs left. And what are they? I don't know. They're just carbs, I guess. So they're not sugar, they're not fiber, they're just another type of carbohydrate. And so the other very nice thing about the new nutrition label is that it calls out added sugars. So this item has 10 grams of added sugars per serving, which means that it would have 80 grams of added sugars if you ate the whole thing. And that is a lot of added sugar. So when people are thinking about stripping sugar from their diet, I never have people focus on natural sugars like sugar from fruit, sugar from vegetables, minuscule amounts of sugars you might find in beans or dairy, but these added sugars. So added sugars are going to be found in like processed sugar, corn syrup, things like that. And these are the sugars that you really want to strip out of your diet, especially if you're not like going out for 60-mile bike rides every day. So these are the ones that are going to cause your blood glucose to spike and make it easier for you to gain weight, harder for you to lose weight, and they also impact all sorts of things in our hormones. Okay, so we can move on. Are there any questions about the nutrition label and how to read one? Okay. I can't see the chat box because I've got my notes over here. So we're going to talk about considerations for women, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but we talked about calcium and iron and vitamin D just a little bit. We know that they're needed for bone health and for blood and all of that, but as we get older as women, so you'll see these ages up here in the top bars in the darker green bars. So calcium, when we're younger, through the age of 18, we need about 13 milligrams per day. And then in our adult stage, we need about 1,000 milligrams per day. So that number actually goes down when we're adults as compared to when we're teenagers and we're growing. So we need only 1,000 milligrams to maintain. And then when we hit, they say 51 plus, which is like just a generic age for menopause. So we know that we hit menopause at different times. So just take that with a grain of salt. But menopause lowers the amount of estrogen in the body. So estrogen is a hormone that helps you increase your calcium absorption and retains minerals in the bones. So calcium is one that people over 50, women over 50 might consider supplementing, especially because we need 1,200 milligrams. And so if you are supplementing with calcium or supplementing with anything, the most important thing you can do is if your vitamin or mineral, if your vitamin supplement has 2 pills, take one in the morning and one in the afternoon so that you're not taking them together. Because when you give your body a mega dose of anything, it's not going to absorb most of it. So you're going to help your body absorb more nutrition from your multivitamins by like spreading them out a little bit. So you can even get pill cutters. If your multivitamin is 1 pill, you can get a pill cutter and take half of it in the morning and half of it in the afternoon. And that'll help you not only save some money in your pocketbook, but also help your body absorb those more efficiently. So then our iron needs also vary significantly, and vegetarians need almost twice as much iron as non-vegetarians. This is because heme iron is found in animal products and meat specifically. whereas non-heme iron is found in plant products, and non-heme iron is just not as bioavailable, which means our bodies don't absorb as much of it. So I also like to point out that men only need 8 to 10 milligrams of iron per day on average throughout their whole lifetime. And you'll see that women need 15 milligrams when we're in puberty, and then 18 milligrams when we're just trying to be healthy adults. So that's over twice as much as a man. And that's because we give life to this planet. So, and then during pregnancy, that number, goes up again by almost 10 milligrams. And then lactation, it drops quite a bit. And then over 50 plus, it drops again because we're no longer having periods every month. And then vitamin D, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but groups at risk for vitamin D inadequacy include people over 70, people with dark skin, and then people with limited sun exposure. So as we get older, like I said, we typically start to wear more sleeves. Now that we're also sun aware, we are wearing a lot more sunscreen, which also blocks out vitamin D. And so, and like I said, it depends, like if you live closer to the equator, you get more vitamin D from the sun because the ozone layers are not as thick. So there's a lot that goes into this. So you can supplement with our vitamin D increases at 70 years of age because we need it so much for our bone health and to help us absorb all that calcium that we need for our bone health as well, and to stave off osteoporosis and rheumatoid arthritis. And then I just have a quick note about omega-3s. So these are a type of fat, and they're found a lot in seafood and chia seeds and things like that. But we are learning more and more about how omega-3s are beneficial for our bodies, and specifically for women. They help protect against menstrual pain, rheumatoid arthritis, and osteoporosis, and they also aid in heart health by lowering the amount of fatty acids in the blood and contributing to higher good cholesterol levels. And they also reduce inflammation associated with decreasing estrogen as we age. If inflammation can cause more joint pain, can cause hair thinning and things like that. And then omega-3s have also been found to improve our moods and decrease depression, and also buffer against memory loss. And they also help reduce hot flashes in menopause. So the recommended intake for omega-3s is 1,200 to 2,000 milligrams per day. So that's 1.2 to 2 grams. And you can take that in a fish oil supplement. But a lot of times with fish oil, you just want to make sure that you're actually getting EPA and DHA, which are the two omega-3s that are going to be the most important. So looking at the label to make sure that you are getting 1,200 to 2,000 milligrams of those two nutrients together, because some will only have like 100 of each or 200 of each, and then they have some other omega in there. They might be omega-6 or omega-9, but omega-3s are the ones that are the most important because we get less of them. We get them from a smaller variety of places in our diets. And then just stress. So we talked a little bit about stress earlier too, but stress, especially as we get older and we're starting to lose estrogen anyway, it can lead to increased cortisol production, and cortisol not only causes weight gain in the abdominal area, but it also causes increased cravings for sweets, fatty, and salty foods, which can compound weight gain quickly if not controlled. So getting enough sleep, managing your stress, and taking omega-3 supplements and eating a healthful diet can help you manage your cortisol levels. And cortisol is like a whole nother branch of the nutrition tree. So we talked a little bit about supplements. These are supplements that women might consider: calcium, vitamin D, and omega-3s. Vitamin D, again, is a fat-soluble vitamin. All these vitamin companies know this, so they're not usually putting doses in there that are going to make you sick. But if you're starting a supplement, the best thing to do is start on the smaller dosage side and then build up if you're aiming for a specific goal, so you're not shocking your body with all this stuff it hasn't had before. And you'll usually find calcium and vitamin D together, and that's fine because they help each other, right? And then you can also find calcium and vitamin D fortified in orange juice, and they do that for lots of reasons. But that would be a good source of supplemental calcium and vitamin D, right? Having it along with your breakfast cereal. or your oats. And so supplements are an unregulated industry, so you should always look for a third-party verification. These are the top 5 third-party certifications, and you'll see these exact little stamps on the labels. So I think every supplement that I take has an NSF or a USP verification on it. You can also use this link here to check your supplements against the Operation Supplement Safety Scorecard, which I have on the next slide. So this scorecard was created by the Department of Defense. And it's just pretty helpful because it's just 7 simple questions. And if your supplement scores a 4 or higher, then you can feel pretty confident about taking it. But if it's a 4 or less, then you should consider changing your supplement.
And Courtney,
All right.
how do we feel about supplements? Like, I know I've seen Athletic Greens, Bloom, all of these, like, eat your greens powders in the morning and be a healthier person.
I mean, those are basically just going to have a lot of B vitamins. So they typically have a lot of B vitamins in them. B vitamins give you a lot of energy because, you know, they're increasing all these things in your body. But I don't know off the top of my head if Athletic Greens has a third-party certification. I'm fairly sure it does. But if you're eating a healthy diet and getting a variety of fruits and vegetables, then you don't really need to take those things. You know, like you'd be better off just like buying more berries to put in your smoothie or something. But so my final thoughts, and I already touched on this earlier, is aiming for 3 to 5 food groups in a meal, and then at least 2 food groups in a snack, so that you're pairing your foods together. So this is helping you reach your food group goal for the day, but also optimizing the nutrients that your body can absorb. And then eating the rainbow. So a healthy plate should have at least 3 colors. And then I always get asked if white foods can count. They're like, well, what about white? Like, yeah, white foods can count as long as they're vegetables. So cauliflower, parsnips, mushrooms, onions, potatoes, and then also like yogurt and milk and plant-based milks and things like that can also count, and tofu. You know, we're just not saying white rice, basically. White bread, white rice, ice cream. I mean, ice cream can count sometimes. And then getting your sleep. So sleep is really important. And we didn't talk a lot about sleep today because it's not something that you put in your mouth, but sleep, the more you sleep, the better it is for your body. And when your body's at rest is when your hormones get balanced and when your cells get to cleanse. And that means that that's when you're losing weight. So if you're not getting enough sleep at night, then that can really be something that's making your body more stressed out and causing you to hold on to weight. So sleep is a very important part of weight loss. And then managing your stress to help that cortisol cycle be diminished. You know, things you can do to manage stress include journaling, reducing your screen time, especially before bed, meditating, using an app like Calm if you need to use an app, and then like yoga, walks, or other exercise you enjoy, or even just breathing exercises. And then last but not least, if you were intrigued by any of these topics or offshoots, I have some further reading recommendations for you on this slide. Oh, you don't have that slide.
But we'll send out the new slide back to everybody, and we'll make sure Diane gets it, and she'll be able to distribute. Liz asked, can you get too much sleep?
I don't think so. I would have to look into that, but I've never heard of that being a bad thing. People tend to sleep more when like in general, when you're depressed, people sleep more, but like that's for most healthy people, like that's just like a phase usually. But if you're clinically depressed, then that's something to talk to a doctor about. So, you know, but I don't think that sleep would be harmful even in that case.
And then we'll share, let's see, we've got, can you share your details, Courtney? Would love a one-to-one nutrition session.
Yes, I do have, I think is there a slide? There should be one more slide left, no? Yeah, so there's my email address.
Again, we'll send out the slides and we'll make sure everybody gets it. A couple, I know we're at time, and Dan will give you time to close up. I think, thank you, Courtney, for this awesome session. It was very cool. There's so much we didn't even get to talk about. Like Courtney's background is incredible, And she also works closely with the WIC programs and SNAP programs, and she's worked with DC Health as well as USDA working on those programs. So her work is critical to making sure that women and children get the proper nutrition across the board. So very cool stuff. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Meg for a quick.
Oh, honestly, Veronica said it all. I thought she did a brilliant wrap up, which was, Courtney, thank you. It was such invaluable information that you shared, and it felt like we only scratched the surface. So, perhaps we'll have you back at some point again and dive into some of these subjects more deeply. But I just love the wrap up slide that you had kind of at the end. I thought it was so helpful to remind everyone of, like, one of the comments you said was keep your body unstressed. And I thought that was such a brilliant statement, since that's hard for all of us often, and how important nutrition plays into that. So, that was amazing. So thank you. And Diane's going to be in touch with everybody. And Veronica, thank you for moderating. Appreciated that as well. And Diane will be in touch with a lot of the upcoming events, but as she mentioned at the top of the hour, the big upcoming event that we have is the retreat up in Narrowsburg, New York, 19th through the 21st. And we also have the How Forum in New York City coming up on November 3rd. Sorry, God. Dinner on the 2nd. Forum on the 3rd. So mark your calendars for that. And then Diane will keep you posted on all the other events that we'll have virtually that are coming up as well. So once again, Courtney, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your sharing your expertise, and so helpful. Veronica, thank you for moderating, and thank all of you for joining. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Hey there, I'm trying to stop the recording. I don't know why I'm.
Busy any day, the afternoon that you tied up.